Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Forward Vietnam podcast. I'm Valerie, co-host of podcast together with Chi and Fu. This is the first time we do the episode in English because we have an international guest for the first time. So really excited. And this week, our first international guest is Nicole. Really curious about the topic of battery and energy, but we haven't found the right guest for this topic, which is really technical and demand more like deep knowledge. And when I first met Nicole, I thought immediately that she would be the perfect fit for this topic.
The developed market is more potential because like here people are more wealthy, so they care more about environment, they care more about sustainability, while in the developing country and emerging market people focus more on feeding the family and earning enough.
There is a wrong assumption is that EV and e-bike is more expensive to use, so if people are more price sensitive, people are less likely to adopt to the trend. However, if we really look at the number, it's actually similar price to buy a EV or e-bike than a regular bike.
Now that we see definitely batteries and this EV thing becoming a big factor for our global economy in the next not 10 years but 20, 30 years.
Like a government holding the most of the resources, it's very hard for as a player. You can also buy some mines and you can also try to control some of the mines, but then will be very politically complicated.
So thank you so much, Nicole, for taking your time on a Saturday morning, and would love to hear your introduction. Could you please tell our audience what's your name and then where you're from and what are you working on? What's your startup mission and product?
Yes, thanks. And thank you so much for inviting me to this podcast. I just visited Vietnam, very excited about people, the economy, and super fancy the food. So very excited to be here. And my name is Nicole. I'm the co-founder and the CEO of Tiger New Energy. Our mission is to lead the transformation of mobility electrification in emerging markets. We're currently piloting in Bangladesh, and we provide both battery and battery swapping service. We started this business 2 years ago when I graduated from Harvard Business School and Harvard Kennedy School, because we truly believe in the trend of sustainability and clean energy. And also, I really believe in the region and the growth potential in emerging markets. When people talk about e-bike or EV, people always focus on developing market, but no one really has eye on emerging markets. However, I see great potential in emerging markets for EV and e-bike. So that's why I come to this region and want to contribute to the change in this region.
So when it comes to the difference in energy and battery between developed market and emerging market, there's an argument saying that the developed market is more potential because here people are more wealthy, so they care more about environment, they care more about sustainability, while in the developing country and emerging market people focus more on feeding the family and earning enough to just for the food, and they care a little less about energy, sustainability, and clean energy.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about that statement? And is that true, or do you think maybe something that people misunderstanding so far about that concept?
I think that's 80% true. People do care more about financial returns or affordability when they think about if they want to invest in EV and e-bike, and less on the sustainability side. However, I think it should not be a reason that the EV and e-bike trend cannot develop in those markets, because there is a wrong assumption is that EV and e-bike is more expensive to use. So if people are more price sensitive, people are less likely to adopt to the trend. However, if we really look at the number, EV and e-bike more affordable to use. One is actually similar price to buy a EV or e-bike than a regular bike. And if you don't just look at the premium model, if you look at premium, they're always like expensive version. But if you look at the products, the model that target to the mass market, is actually similar price to buy. And secondly, it's much cheaper to use. So every day, if you have if all you want, then you need to buy petrol, and the price is increasing every time. However, if you have electrical one, you just need to charge, and many companies provide free charging nowadays. So it's much cheaper to use. So even people in emerging markets are more price sensitive. It can also have a potential that EV and e-bike is a solution. One is contribute to the environment for sustainability angle. Second, it will also benefit the people from the financial perspective. And why I said that's the 80% correct part, and why I said that's 20% not really incorrect, is I see there are huge incentive for people to adopt to the trend. It's from the national security perspective. So, for example, in emerging markets, for countries like Sri Lanka, like Bangladesh, they highly rely on imported fossil fuel. And this imported fossil fuel exposed the country to price volatility and supply disruption, which can have significant impact on the country's economic growth or even national security. So we see actually there's higher demand coming from those emerging markets to make this transition because of the national security concern.
As what I understanding so far is, although in the developing country, people might truly care a little less about the environment concern, and that's not going to be the major incentive for them to adopt EV and electrical vehicle. But when the EV and battery and this industry moving forward and successfully develop into and make EV more accessible and more affordable, then at that point, the major incentive for people to switch from the traditional energy source into the EV is cheaper to use and is very affordable for those people.
Yes.
And beside that, it's gonna be energy. It's a national security concern for some country that they don't have, that they can reduce the dependence on energy on those major country.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes, and it's also our mission is that it's truly important that it's sustainable, but it's sustainable. We want to make it sustainable not just for the environment, but also for the people who are using it.
So to follow up, do you think emerging market or Asian region will will make EV become mass product faster than the developed world? Because if I look at, battery manufacturing capacity by country right now,
Yeah.
almost 80% of it is made from China. So it looks like the Asian market is already dominating at least the battery sector. It's a matter of only time when it comes to mass adoption of EV. Do you see that also Asian market in all the neighboring country of China will adopt it first rather than the West?
Yes. So if we look at the data, China is not only the largest manufacturer of EV and batteries, but also the largest consumption market for the EV, with 41% of the global EV market share, and US has 17% of the global EV market share. And China's one is the more users and manufacturers in China. I think that will definitely benefits the adoption rate on the country nearby. One is a similar culture and it's very similar user behavior. So when the people nearby, for example, Vietnam, many people I see they are adapted to EV and e-bike because they used to work in China or travel to China, and they see this like in China people are using e-bike, so it's easier for the customers to adopt this trend. And the similar culture and the city concept can tell this user stories easier to other markets. And secondly is China has the supply chain advantage on supplying EV and EV parts. So they'll be cheaper for the neighboring countries, easier for the customers to buy or for the suppliers to procure parts at a lower price from China, then do assembling or production locally to bring down the cost and to make this product also affordable to the customer. For example, we see the e-bike price in Vietnam actually is much cheaper than other market, and the adoption rate is much higher than other market as well.
Maybe I would like to take a step back for, I guess, our audience to know a little bit more about you. Like in your introduction, you went to Harvard, and then now that you're doing this great thing in batteries and energy. But why batteries and energy particularly? I know that you mentioned about the mission, right? But then why Bangladesh as well? Can you give like a quick, foundation for our audience to know more about your journey? What, bring you here today?
Yes. So why specifically energy or why specifically battery is a very interesting bet for me. So firstly, when I choose that why I want to start my own business, I'm thinking about it's not what's trendy, but what's the mega trend that can carry forward for 10 or 20 years. And the sustainability is definitely the one. And also mobility, providing greener and also more affordable solution for people is the thing that drives my passion. There's many people actually doing e-bike. So why I'm doing battery? So I think in the world of you have like a regular and engine-driven bike. The engine is the heart of the bike. It's the heart of the technology. However, when the world transitioned to e-bike, to EV, and what are the key concerns or the key questions that people are asking when they adopted to this trend is, one, how long I can drive my bike for. Secondly is how long is the charging time if it's go out of battery. And the last one is how often I need to replace this battery are very expensive. And all those questions are related to batteries. And the batteries becomes the key of or the focus of technology for e-bike and EV. And it's also the main reason that if people want to adopt to EV or not. And also the battery cost is 30 to 50% of the whole EV. Then this is the core value. So how can we have better technology, have better business model towards the battery, and can help people to adopt this trend and make this transition more smoothly? Then that's the whole sort of process that why I want to do energy and why specifically I want to do battery.
So interesting fact that you mentioned that the battery itself is 40% of the cost for the whole EV. Very substantial. What are these key priorities and I guess characteristic for battery materials?
Yes.
I think you mentioned some dimension like cost and energy power, but would love to hear more explanation from you.
Yes, so the priority for battery materials, one is performance, like which material give you the highest energy density. So you can hold the same amount of energy at a very light and durable pack. And secondly is safety. So they have two angles. So which is safer to produce and which one is safer to use. So for example, at the very beginning, lithium battery is a very debatable material in the industry because lithium is very active. So there's a high chance to explode. And then lots of technology help to prevent the risk that the battery can explode. And the third is cost. So which battery material can be more cost effective to use. Then how can you break down as I said, make sure the battery and the EV is not just sustainable for the environment, but also sustainable for the user who are using it. And fourthly is sustainability, the environment, like which material has less environmental hassle. And also, I think for this part, people only think about what's the material that's more environmental friendly during the manufacturing process or during the usage process. But I really focus on more about Then how about the recycle efficiency? Which material is more and easier to recycle? And do we have good technology to recycle? For example, I think this is the big issue. Nowadays, we have lithium batteries. We are expanding the landscape of EV and e-bike using much, much more lithium batteries. Like the technology of producing better lithium battery is like developing very fast. However, the technology to recycle lithium battery is still lagging behind. I think that's still a huge chance and a space for technology and for good suppliers and for good manufacturing process as well. And the last part is scalability. So which material or which technology that's good for commercialization, for mass production is also key. For example, we have also some good ideas like flow battery. That's very good for storage battery. However, for that type of technology, it's still not scaled yet. It's still like at the lab stage. So for that part, need more time to bring that to commercialization.
Yeah, it's amazing to learn about the main three factors that the people in the industry very focused about. To me, I have heard and I do a little research about the battery industry, and I know there's two concerns that I also concern, and you also mentioned it. The first is, to me, it's not about the density of the energy density, because I think that's technical challenge that will be overcome in the future when more money poured into the R&D, and also like what technology is going to be get mass adopted and mass is going to be the best optimal for commercial. I think it's going to be that question going to be solved in the future. But there's two concerns that I also thinking about. Is the first is about the material, the earth rare metal. That is the main component of the battery right now. And because those resources are limited, and then when this technology is developed and is get mass scale, those limited resource is gonna run out very fast. Or even if we want to mine more of those, is very environmental harmful. And secondly, is the fact that right now we don't have the equivalent technology for recycle the battery yet. So I really want to deep dive into these two concerns a little more. First, for the raw material, for the raw metals, which is I think lithium, right? Copper and what's the nickel, right? What's the concern? Have you seen in the industry about these three? Like where are they, like located? Who's owning these? And how's the mining process, the logistic of getting these things out of the ground has been?
Yeah. I think in this region that people hear the news or the change of Indonesia's national plan. That's a great shift from original focus to the EV focus, because it holds a large amount of the original resource of the metal that you mentioned. I think it's a great national strategy, adapt to the EV trend and also use the resources they have to maximize and to develop the industry, because now Indonesia does not just want to sell those metal. It requires people who want to use or own those natural resources to really build a factory and a manufacturing plant in Indonesia. So they will drag the whole supply chain to Indonesia, most likely. And secondly is those resources is actually really scarce. So people are developing different technologies, like a CATL is developing the sodium ion battery, and the sodium is much more abundant and less expensive than lithium. So that's why people are really also seeking alternative options and battery material to solve the resources issue that you mentioned. And the benefits with sodium ion battery is the cost is much lesser, and the resource is much more accessible. And downside is the energy density is much lower than lithium ion. So if you want to hold the same density, the sodium will look much bigger. Not much bigger, like bigger. And also the cycle time for lithium is also longer than sodium. So if you have lithium, it's more likely that longer than sodium batteries. However, if this technology develop and to add more chemicals to control the discharge and discharge rate, also to control how those chemicals react. It might help. But from the material perspective, the lithium the lithium iron battery will bring longer discharge cycle than sodium ion battery. I think that's how the industry are solving this. Is how it's interesting, like lithium iron, all the metals and the materials that mentioned is a scarce natural resources, and how different nations like Indonesia overcome this issue. They see opportunities and they take advantage of the resources they're owning, and how industry play and players like manufacturers like CATO overcome this issue. They are developing alternative technologies to overcome this resources issue.
That's a very interesting analogy in comparison between lithium ion and sodium ion battery. So you mentioned that sodium is cheaper and more abundant than lithium, but it's less powerful and less energy density, right? Which one are you focusing more on?
Yeah, so now it's lithium iron. So the reason is, one, the technology is more mature, and the application that you can find is more. So if you produce lithium, the prototype that you can fit in, or an application you can fit in, is more. So that's more commercial value for lithium right now. And secondly, the supply chain is less challenging. So if you have lithium, that's easier for you to find the upstream suppliers and downstream suppliers much easier. Lastly is, I still think, given the current stage, if you even out everything, lithium iron at this stage still have more commercial value than sodium. And also there's another news. So the one of the largest advantage of sodium is the cost. So however, this year the lithium battery and the lithium material drop a lot. So I think it can be very challenging for CATO. So if the price of lithium battery and the material continues to drop, the cost advantage of sodium will be less obvious.
Is that a good thing though, for lithium price to drop? That means price of EV also drop, right?
Yeah.
Then it might have a negative impact to your startup.
I think it will be a good thing. So it's easier for people to this trend. So it will be easier for people to try to make the switch if the price is cheaper.
Interesting. So that's about the concern, and not the concern, but about the technology of alternative battery technology that we're having right now. So what you mentioned is that although that's true, there's some constraint around some metal. We always be able to develop new technology, new battery technology with different metal to overcome those constraint and resource and limitation of the resources. But you also mentioned that you focus a lot more on the recycling part of the battery, and this is something that I really interesting as well. So what have you seen? What the main technology? What's the most exciting thing in the battery recycle that you have seen? Like, for example, like how much percent of the battery that we've been able to recycle right now? Like what's the process has been going through, and what make you excited the most about this sector?
Yes, I'll explain that in a very simple way. So the first stage of recycling we call the secondary use. So if you have a battery and the battery contains, for example, 10 cells, when you see, okay, my whole battery is dying, but if you deassemble them, you realize like the different cells actually holds different level of capacity. Because when it's used, it's not evened out. It's like some still have like higher and some still have lower. So for that, we take the 10 cells out and we remeasure the capacity left for each cell. So we recategorize them. Then we have like very good students and like less good students. Then they will pick all the good cells together and we repacked all the good cells together to a new battery that's called a recycled cell and a recycled battery. And for those battery, the capacity is not as strong as before. So it's not good for EV and e-bike because EV and e-bike, you need very strong power. But those recycled battery can be good for those applications that does not require a very strong energy and like intense energy. So those can be used for example, storage and backup, and also for household. And I see, for example, if you have a street food station, and you also need battery for lighting and for some simple electricity, and those recycled battery is just very good for that purpose. And it's affordable and it's safer, and also the energy or the capacity requirement that fits exactly to that type of application. And secondly, then you have all the good cells, and you will have some very low capacity cells. And for those cells, you need to actually do the recycling process with them. And in the industry, there are major three types of recycling method. One is you burn them. So when you burn, the different metals have different melting temperature. So you set the temperature that you make sure that the valuable metal is left out after the burning process. And secondly is the melting. So you put it in the chemical resolution. So you make sure that the things that you don't want is melting out, and you have the valuable metal that you want is left out after process. And there is one public company doing battery recycling called Lead Recycle. So this chemical resolution process is the main technology they are using. And the last method is called a direct method. So direct method is you doing deassemble. So for example, it's just mainly the positive and the negative angle of the battery that contains expensive metal, right? So the one method is, can we do deassembling? So it's just so you take everything out again. So it's kind of like when you do the manufacturing, you melting them, you do the melting process, and now you are doing the deassembling process. And for that part, I know there are many startups that they are doing. So the difficulty for this kind of methodology is, how about the efficiency? Then do you have a proper machinery to deal with? And the different, actually we have different shape of and the battery cells. So it's hard to fit in different machines. So I know that many startups are developing the machines. They make the deassembling process more automatic and more cost efficient.
Interesting. It's not even halfway through, and I already learned so much from the conversation. So this is very interesting. That's the reason why when we use our phone is gonna sometimes gonna be from 100% to 50% is half of the day, and another half is just an hour. That's because of the second half of the battery cell is a bad student, right? And the first half's a good student, and we can actually pick them out. Wow, that's so interesting.
Yeah, but it's because it's all sealed together. Yeah, it's okay for the manufacturer to do that, but it will be difficult for regular consumer to identify which one's good, which one's bad.
Yeah, actually, a lot of the knowledge that you mentioned about battery recycle, I did not know about. As an investor, what should I do to keep up with the ever-changing landscape of EV and battery? And do you think energy transition is more profound than the internet?
Oh, it's a very. I have to say that this can be a very tough question. I say the industry is still very promising. What I want to discuss about the energy sectors, there are different. I think the transition involves more players. That's a very important party we haven't discussed is the government. And the policy and the government actually also play a huge part on the energy transition. For example, China adopted this EV trend faster, both e-bike and EV car, because government really puts lots of policies either to incentivize people use more EV or to restrict the energy bike. For example, in China, 10 and 15 years ago, most of the cities, they banned the oil e-bike. So then the engine e-bike. So that you have no choice. Either you ride your bicycle or you try e-bike. So lots of people start trying e-bike and they realize the benefits of the e-bike. It's light and also it's more cost efficient. And the government also find advantage of using e-bike. One, that's more environmental friendly. Second is you can set the limitation of the speed of e-bike. For example, if you have a motorcycle, it can go very fast. It can go 120 kilometers per hour. However, most of the e-bike in China, the speed limit is 60 kilometers per hour or 80 kilometers per hour. So it's safer for the city usage. And now what they do for cars, for example, in Shanghai, if you want to buy a regular car, the licensing plan is very expensive. It's like 100k RMB. That's around how much? If I divide it by 7, it's like 15. It's like 15,000 RMB to buy a licensing plan. Then if you buy an EV, it's free. Then when people think about, oh, okay, I can save like 15,000 US dollars by switching to EV, then why not? So then more and more people switching to EV, then the government also build and incentive by the ecosystem to get more charging station, the facility gets better, and then that's how the ecosystem is built up. And another very interesting for EV policy in China is, so if you are regular, you need a credit. So if you are a car manufacturer, you need a credit to manufacture and sell regular cars. So for example, I don't know what's the credit exactly right now. For example, you need to produce and sell one EV in order to produce and sell one regular car. If you don't have the credit yourself, then you need to buy credits from other EV manufacturers. So then many people think, oh, then how come the EV price for some brands and some models can be so cheap? Because they don't need to make money on the EV and on the car selling part. They can make lots of money by selling their credits to the manufacturer who produce regular cars. And that credits, I think, is getting more and more expensive. So I think it's called the green credit. So I think the green credit, and also the zero fee for the licensing play for e-bike. Those are very good policies, really, really booming the industry that way. So I think for investors, there's so many things to focus for or to observe for the energy sector that's very different from other sector is one, you need to look at the technology, and the second is you look at the consumer, how they adopt to this trend and how's the product and the market fit. But besides that, you also want to observe government policies. How's government provide incentive to build a whole ecosystem and to incentivize people to make this transition. And it's also important.
Very interesting. Because recently my friends and I are having a lot of conversation about like buying EV cars because we have like tax credit from the government, right? If you're in the state, you know that you get cash back up to like 7K or so. So a lot of people are incentivized to buying EV cars, and especially for California residents, because by 2035, according to the mayor, he would not, ban automobile manufacturers from producing like normal internal combustion engine cars. So definitely that's a perk for early movers, early adopters of like EV manufacturer. So I have a follow-up on that point. So where in that whole value chain, supply chain, do you think gonna capture the most value? Would it be the battery producer, manufacturer, or would it be like the vehicle producer? Would it be the charging station companies? Because I know that, Tesla, they have their own charging station infrastructure or network, right? But then there are all the company building stations nationwide, right? You can come in, charge there, and then leave. So who's going to capture the most value based on your opinion?
as what I pick up is the government new rules and regulations such as green credit in China, and also in the US they just passed some chips acts, and also a lot of bills that favor EV technology and EV car, which I believe the regulation and the government is going to play a very important role um, on the adoption and the development of this technology. um, I would love to learn a little, you, because you definitely the expert on this and the better observer than I am. So what's the different culture and standpoint, and like a viewpoint of the government around the world? So for example, like is comparing from the Chinese governments to the US government to Indonesian government and to Vietnam governments, like what's the adoption standpoint of these government right now around the world, and how different they are?
Yeah, here two questions. So one is what's the we have different part of the value chain. Then which part of the value chain gonna catch the most value? And another question that I hear is what's the government's adoption rate in those emerging markets? So I think for the first question, I think now because it's a new game and people are still figuring it out. If we look at the old automotive industry, I think the EV industry gonna be very similar dynamics to the old automotive industry. So who catch the most value? It's one, those manufacturers with a strong brand power. Second is those technology providers who host the core technology of the auto parts. In the past, that was the engine, and now it's the technology providers or the developers who host the core technology of batteries. And I don't think there will be a essentially battery manufacturer, because if you look at China, you look at those countries those companies who are battery manufacturing, their gross margin actually is like pressing down a lot, and it will push them. So when the technology is mature and when the barrier is lesser, so it will eventually reach out to an industrial average, and it was to be the person who holds once the brain power, secondly is the channel, third is the technology, will share the most value along the supply chain. And also for the second question about different governments, different adoption rate, I see actually every government is working on the policy, but they are at a different stage. For example, I see the news that the Vietnam government have this incentive to ban all the oil e-bike in 2030, but it's just like how fast they push the implementation. And I see the government in Indonesia, they give lots of incentive for people, so for the suppliers to build a manufacturing plant in Indonesia, and for the users to get government incentives to buy EV and e-bike. Also in Bangladesh, recently the government also published the policy to before it does not allow two-wheeler e-bike to register. Now they free open up two-wheeler, three-wheeler, or four-wheeler e-bike can freely register according to the government policy and the different developments. So I think every country is trying to do something on the policy side. It's just depends on how's the implementation goes and how fast they can reach to, or how effective they can help with the energy transition.
I can see that you place a lot of focus on emerging market, and then you're making a bet on emerging markets, right? And I guess like in the past century, oil is really the black gold of the world, right? We went into many wars, I guess like the World War One, World War Two, and the power that a lot of conflicts in the Middle East region also arises from the fight for oil control or oil power. Now that we see definitely batteries and this EV thing becoming a big factor for our global economy in the next not 10 years but 20, 30 years, So would like something like lithium, nickel, cobalt becoming something very essential to our supply chain, just like oil has been for the past century. And then from the data I got, like Congo, right, country right now holds like more than half of the world reserve. Would how much power would those country with a lot of reserve of those very critical material would have for the next decades, and how can we prepare for that as a
Yeah, you are exactly right. I think people are fighting for resources, and before it's oil, and then now can be nickel. I think it's the same story. It's just like fighting for different type of resources. I definitely see the trend coming. So that's exactly why I see battery recycling. It's a booming sector on the whole energy and EV trend, because like a government holding the most of the resources, it's very hard for as a player. You can also like buy some mines, and you can also try to control some of the mines, but then will be very politically complicated. And also, for example, the nations like Indonesia, they are really conscious of like how they want to give away the ownership of certain resources and mines. So that's why I think as a regular player, the part that we can play is recycling. And those are also metals. Those are also resources, but it's less regulated and also with less political complexity. But there's also some regulations going on like how you recycle, how the supply chain go. But it's definitely less complicated than you want to buy a mine, or you want to own certain part of the mine. And also it can be done at a smaller scale. So for example, if you want to imagine you're going to buy a mine, and there'll be or you want to do commodity trading, then the quantity is very large and the capital required is very large. However, if you do recycling, I think there's lots of players can join. Like for example, if you want to build a pure tech player, that you can just develop the technology and later on you sell the technology. And if you want to play with the supply chain, or you want to be a channel player, then you can identify the different price or different like channel to collect those old lithium battery, and then you can sort it out and to redistribute. And so there's also room for like distributors. And there's also room for recyclers. For example, if you have a plant and the plant can at a different scale, and if you have good technology, then you can start and doing those recycling productions. So I think there's so many players can play on this part of the game to overcome the resources issue. So I think that's what I want to focus on, and I think that's more if you are a player at a smaller scale, or you are investor at a smaller scale. I think that's definitely a sector that we can put more attention and energy on.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure if you are like countries leaders right now, you have to be cognizant of what's the strength and the weaknesses that your country is having, right? Because owning a large amount of those resources can come as a blessing in disguise, because your neighbors or like powerful countries in the world will look at you. How can we exploit your resources? And I saw interviews from those countries with large reserves in cobalt and nickel. I think they learned a lot from the oil story, because what we've seen in the past is that countries with raw oils, they don't know how to process them, right? They only know how to drill them and then export or send to like developed country. But that's where most of the value is created, right? And then you don't want to put a coal in your backyard, because it's going to ruin your environment and a lot of things. So they want to be a vertical now, complete vertical. They want to drill it, they want to process it, they want to sell it to the world, capture the entire value. So like in America, we know we have a lot of oils, but the leaders here, they're being very smart about it. They don't over drill, they don't over explore anything here. That's why we have pretty good, I think, environment where they're here. But I feel like this game is changing a little bit now that we're shifting into the world of EV for the next couple of decades. So I guess for a country with like we can learn from country with like zero or very minimal resources like Japan or like Singapore has done in the past couple of decades. They have nothing but the rise very quickly to become like some country with very, very high GDP per capita. So I guess just want to speak specifically about Vietnam in general, right? Because a lot of our audience is Vietnamese. What do you think? I don't know if you have the chance to look at Vietnam. Where can we play in this whole EV? Because we have VinFast, our first ever EV manufacturer, and then we also have our first batch launch in America. Do you see Vietnam as having some competitive advantage in building something in EV or play a role in that global EV supply chain?
Yeah, so firstly, I really agree with the point that you mentioned that the nations owning resources will not necessarily holding the most value. There's a concept called a natural resources curse. It's like the nations that are holding those resources actually prevent them to have more technology advantage because they already become very abundant because of that. And countries like Japan focus more on the later part and the more value-added part of the value chain actually benefits even more along the game. And secondly, I definitely see Vietnam. I just visited Vietnam, and it's a booming market for EV. So currently, it already has the highest adoption rate of EV among all the Southeast Asia countries. And I see several drivers can drive the EV industry forward. One is I see the facility is actually very good in Vietnam, like the grid. The electricity support is relatively more stable. So you already have the first important facility, which is the electricity. And the second is the population and also the population density. It's easier to build a network of charging facilities, both in the cities like Ho Chi Minh or Hanoi. And those you have the basic of like do I have the basic things of to build a foundation or to build up the infrastructure for EV? I think that part Vietnam already has. And secondly, is the people and I see the population size is significant, and people are using two-wheelers a lot, and those who are using two-wheelers can make the transition to use two-wheelers. And I see the growth actually coming from those people. It will be harder if I already have a regular bike to give away my regular bike to buy an e-bike. It'll be harder, but I see the increasing demand was just the new demand who are coming from students who are buying their first bike. And those are early adopters, and they are young and they are adopting to the new concept. And also like female and like the wife in the household, and they want to buy an additional bike. And I see demand coming from those sectors. They have a very good education level or good acceptance rate for new things like e-bike. So I see the consumers as relatively more educated. And the last part I see that actually is very good and it's very important is Vietnam has a very strong providers. For example, like VinFast, I see there's different models of both EV and e-bike, and VinFast is and also like that bike in Vietnam, and they are providing good products to the market. It's also very important. And in some markets, people may want to adapt to EV and e-bike, but they don't have good supply or like a good models to choose from at a reasonable rate. So I think, however, Vietnam already have some very good suppliers, and I think those factors like you have demand and you have supply and you have the infrastructure, and those three together can be a very good driver for Vietnam's EV market.
So relate to that question though, you mentioned about like the Vietnam right now is adopting the EV technology and the e-bike a lot more faster than other country. However, I wondering if we compare Vietnam to maybe the more developed country adopting this technology like US or China. What do you think in terms of the infrastructure development that we might want to develop to be able to keep up even faster with the development of the EV sector? Because you mentioned about the charging station, right? You mentioned about the logistic. What's the difference here? What can we do to make Vietnam's even more compatible and more adaptable for this new change in the energy sector?
Yes. So I think you mentioned two markets has the highest EV adoption rate. So in China, in 2020, we have 4.5 million EV sold. That's 51% of the global EV market. And in the US, that's around 300,000 EV sold, and that's 17% of the EV market. And if it's for e-bike in China, that's 200 million e-bike. And that's over 80% of the two-wheeler in China are already e-bike. However, in e-bike in the US, it's very small. It's only 600 e-bike or even less. So there's lots of thing. One is how the country adapt to the new trend, but it's also customers' different behavior. So, for example, in the US, people used to drive cars. So when they adapt to EV, the cars will go first. So that's people switching from their regular car to EV. People don't drive bike that much, so you don't expect people to buy too many e-bikes. And in China, actually the trend coming from e-bike, because China was very similar to Vietnam, people driving a lot of e-bike, like motorcycle. So the people switched from motorcycle to e-motorcycle. I think that will be similar to Vietnam. So people used to drive two-wheelers, so like motorcycles. So the first adoption gonna coming from people who are thinking about to buy a motorcycle, they buy a two-wheeler. Then should I buy an oil motorcycle or should I buy an e-bike? And those sector will boom first. Then second will be the people who are thinking about buying a car. Then should I buy an EV or should I buy a regular car? Those are fit to the local market and the consumers' behavior. And according to your question, like what kind of facility do I need? As I mentioned, there are two largest questions for EV. One is the charging issue. So for example, if I have e-bike and I live at the third or third floor of a apartment without elevator, then how can I do the charging, right? And secondly is the range anxiety. So if I use e-bike to do food delivery, for example, I'm a rider for Grab or Gojek, then I have a very long mileage, like a consumption. Then what if at the middle of the way, my e-bike goes out of battery, then I cannot do the work. So, and the second is range anxiety. And the third, I would also think the financial is also very important. Like, if I buy a motorcycle, it's very mature. That's how much the bank knows what to do, right? How I evaluate those portfolio, then how I use the bike as a collateral, like how much financing at what rate should I provide. But is it as mature and as convenient for e-bike and EV? Maybe not there. And the bank bikes still thinking about, okay, how should I do the depreciation? I think the depreciation is different. How should I run a different model and come up with different financial products for people to buy EV and e-bike with also very convenient like a bank loan. So then in order to solve those questions, I think one is the charging facility. I think everyone already be aware of. And the second is also the financial infrastructure is also very important. So when I buy an e-bike, I can get lots of financial loan and I have good resale market, resale value. Then when I buy an EV, I can get no like financing and I can get no place to resell my car. I think that will also stop people from buying it. So there's two things. One is the charging facilities and the second is also the financial and the service infrastructures.
That's so interesting. Yeah, I haven't ever think about the liquidity of the e-bike market, and how it might affect into the adoption of the people into this new technology. There was a famous investor that I very admire. I admire him a lot, which is Chamat, and he took a stand. And he said he tweeted this out, and he mentioned this during a lot of conversation that he had, a lot of interview that he had, saying that he believed in the next decade, the marginal cost of energy and the marginal cost of compute will both go into zero. I would leave the part of the marginal cost of compute out of the equation, and I really want to ask your opinion on how you view the marginal cost of energy in the future will go to zero, and how will the battery sector play if these scenarios actually happen.
So the trend of marginal cost of energy going towards zero is actually largely driven by the growth of renewable energy, such as wind and solar power. So when the facility, so the only cost for you to build is the facility. Then if you already get a break even of this facility, the marginal cost for you to get those energy is zero. So that's the concept. It's highly tied with adoption rate of renewable energy. And as technology continues to improve and scale up, it's very likely that actually I see the future of a marginal cost of energy continues to decline and eventually reach zero or cross zero in many markets. So in that sense, then what's the meaning of that? So if the marginal cost of energy is zero, then your electricity bill becomes very, very low, or even you don't, at a certain market, maybe you don't have to pay for your electricity, then they will drive more adoption towards electrical things. You have more electrical cars, and you have more electrical bikes, or even electrical ships, or electrical flights. And actually, in that sense, battery will play a more crucial role. So one is battery as a power engine. For example, if you have EV, you have a power, you need to use battery to drive the car forward. But there are actually a large segment which Tesla is now moving towards is the storage batteries. So if you have those renewable energy, for example, you generate lots of electricity by solar panels during the daytime, then the important facility is you need lots of storage batteries to store those electricity so you can use them during nighttime. So if that's the world, I'll see another booming for batteries and for batteries in different applications. And we can see more electrical things in our daily life.
Amazing. Yeah, I believe that the reason why, as we mentioned before, and especially as you mentioned before, how important the battery recycle is going to be in the future, because even though the cost of producing the energy can go to zero, if we really cannot recycle the battery effectively, then it's going to cost a lot of money to just store the energy. And for the audience, to a little more detailed explanation of why the marginal cost of energy might go to zero. So the argument and the forecast is going to be because the cost of putting up the solar panel and different kind of renewable energy right now is declining significantly over the years. In the future, you might see everyone just put a solar panel on their roof and they have energy to consume all year long, even have extra to sell back to the powerhouse. And when they sell those back to a powerhouse, like they are more supply, so the demand is gonna stay the same, and it's the cost just decline, and it's reached to zero without the storing energy in the equation. Right now, in that equation, it's just producing energy. So just for the audience, that why the marginal cost of energy might go to zero. And that's amazing. Do you have anything you want to add on?
For example, if you have solar panel, the lifetime of the solar panel is 4 years. So if the cost is continuous to decline, for example, you break even at 2 years, and the rest of 2 years, the sun is free. So the marginal cost for you to get based on those solar panels is zero.
Got it. It's very interesting. And I think we'd like to ask, before we conclude the podcast, what's your stand or your view on the future of energy? What you are most excited about?
I think I'm really excited about, it's the same concept as she mentioned, is like the marginal cost of energy becomes zero, and we have more renewable energy, and we use those energy to drive more technology forward. And we see I think if we don't solve this energy bottleneck, actually stops development of many other things. So we want to see this as a driver to push other things forward, and we see a fancier world in 10 or 15 years.
Yeah, I would love. I know if we have more time, for the audience, if you have your time, I think it's gonna be very interesting to take a look and imagine a picture where the cost of energy get very, very cheap. Because right now, energy is the more constraint when you want whatever you want to do anything, right? So, for example, even when you want to use a generative AI, you still need to pay for the cloud computing, the computing powers. And whenever you produce, there's going to be a lot of new technology, like it's turned society and the physical imagine is upside down. Like there's going to be a lot of things that before everyone's going to say that it's impossible, like physically impossible because of the constraint of the energy. But in the future, when these energy and battery industry moving forward, which make this become the reality, I truly believe it's going to be a lot of amazing things going to come out of this, and if this really going to happen in the future.
Yeah, I'm really happy whenever I talk about this topic, right? Because it shows that we care about each other. We care about our next generation, right? We're building this sustainable energy, this renewable energy, because we care that our next generation, they will have like a better weather, better climate to live in, compared to right now, if we're using a lot of these like oil power vehicles, right? That's going to, cause a global warming and all of that stuff. And that also shows the resiliencies that we have in as a human species, right? We never stop growing, innovating as a species. And that's why I don't want to say that we're the best species on planet, but, recently SpaceX, launched their rocket. It's exploded, but it shows that their rocket can go to Mars. I think that's a very big jump, a very big milestone to show that one day we can go to Mars, and now with renewable energy. And then I guess one last comment I want to make about this energy is that, creating this new type of technology is one thing, but I think storing energy or consuming energy efficiently, effectively is also very important, right? Because in technology data, we talk a lot of like automation processes, right? Reducing the number of steps in a process so that you can complete or manufacture something with the less amount of resources, right? Why don't we do that with energy? Because I remember when I was a kid, my mom often complained at me for not turning off the TV or turning off the light before we go to bed. So we can produce a lot of energy, but at the same time, we don't reduce our amount of consumption rate in parallel. That doesn't help, right? Because like we have a growing population, maybe if everyone just like consume more and more and that we're not generating as much, that's gonna be like another issue for our human race. So right now I watched this podcast from Shirley Mong. She's like professor at U Chicago and very thought leader in this whole battery stuff too. And she mentioned like up to 57 to 60% of energy today has gone into wasted. So let's say like we have our fridge right here, but when's the last time you put all of the stuff into your fridge? I think like most of the time my fridge are like 50% stocked, right? So all of the energy go into keeping my refrigerator running every day from day to day, 24/7, because I rarely unplug it just to save some energy for like a few hours and then plug it in again. So all of that, and then I have my phones maybe play music, play some video while I fell asleep. So that's our wasted energy, right? So I hope that like we're really mindful of like automating these processes at company, but we're also incorporating that into our day-to-day life, right? How do we consume less energy, consume whenever reasonable, and then at the same time like continue pushing the edge of technology. So that's one last comment, my last comment on
I mean, like in the future, just a joke. In the future, maybe like when the cost of marginal cost of producing energy might go to even a negative, right? It might be the time that your mom's gonna tell you not to turn off the TV when you go to sleep. So then, it doesn't cost your mom to send the electricity back to that powerhouse, right? So that might be something that's gonna happen in the next 10 years. But definitely, it very
Well,
exciting.
very doubtful. In 10 years, maybe I don't know. Maybe next life, maybe, but I don't think in the next 10 years.
No, it's people usually overestimate what it can be done in 1 year and underestimate what can be done in 10 years. So that's just my belief. We might see the whole society upside down
Okay,
with
we have this on
energy.
air on this podcast. We'll revisit in 10 years.
Maybe, yeah. Nicole, thank you so much for being a part of energy sector. All the work you have done. Also, thank you so much for like take a step to Vietnam, to the emerging market, to develop projects and new technology, battery technology over there. It's definitely gonna be a big step, a big support that we maybe right now we don't see it yet, but in the future when we look back, we say like, oh, thanks to people like you step into those emerging market where people think it's not impossible, it's not profitable to do the work there, but it's actually helping the society moving forward and help Vietnam and other Asia country become a big player in the future, especially in the energy sector. So, and also thank you so much for all your sharing with us. I learned a lot. I personally learned a lot today about energy.
Definitely, it takes a lot of like bravery and courage too, right? Because you went to Harvard, you definitely have a lot of opportunities in the States to stay and earn some high paying income, right? But then you decide to leave everything behind, come back to Asia and then Bangladesh, right? So really kudos to you for taking up the challenge. And then I know we have like an entrepreneur here, a founder, Valerie. She's been working really hard to grow her business too. Maybe Valerie, you have your last word to say bye to Nicole.
I think thank you for pioneering the industry and driving investment to countries like Bangladesh, Indonesia, and especially Vietnam, where our home is. Definitely looking forward for you and your company, Tiger Energy, to have even more initiative and exciting projects in Vietnam to transform the energy and EV adoption here in Vietnam. So I'm proud to be in this journey together with you, being the pioneer of the country.
Thank you so much. It has been very challenging to this work, renewable energy in emerging markets. However, I really enjoyed the journey so far. And I really like a motto that it says, I choose the road that's less traveled and it makes all the difference. And so far, 2 years, I have been very grateful for the experience and really looking forward to make more difference and to really help people and to help the market move forward.